The unbelievable disappearance of a millionaire's wife in haunted Pittsburgh. I never should have opened that door the moment my hand touched the cold handle. A chill raced down my spine. I'd heard the stories, whispered secrets in the dark about the shadowy mansion perched on the outskirts of Pittsburgh, once belonging to a millionaire. They said it was haunted. They said she vanished. My mornings were typically mundane. Coffee brewing, papers rustling, the hum of the city waking up. I'd put on the same old routine like a comfortable coat. But none of that prepared me for the chill in the air that day. As I stepped into the hallway, the air shifted. It was heavy, thick with an unsettling silence. Shadows danced just beyond my vision. I swear I heard a soft whisper, barely audible but echoing in my ears. My heart raced. What was that? I turned, scanning the room, but everything remained still. I could smell dampness, the mold creeping through the walls. The floorboards creaked beneath my feet, an angry protest to my presence. The chilling sensation prickled my skin. I wasn't alone. Suddenly, a loud crash. Something fell from the counter behind me. My breath caught. I spun around. Just a fallen vase, but why did it feel like a warning? I pushed the thought away. I had to see what was behind that door. With every cautious step towards it, the floor felt colder, as if the house itself breathed a warning. The walls seemed to close in, whispers growing louder, more frenzied. I was teetering on the edge of dread and curiosity, torn between wanting to flee or wanting to plunge into the unknown. Then, without warning, the door creaked open. Darkness spilled out like ink. My heart thundered in my chest, an ominous drumbeat urging me to step back. But my feet felt glued to the floor. A figure lingered just beyond the threshold, obscured by shadows. I could almost make out a face, but it slipped away like smoke. What was happening? My chest tightened, a heavy weight pressing down. Fear twisted in my gut as that figure began to step forward. My breath hitched. A scream clawed at my throat, ready to escape. Then it happened. The door slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing like a death knell. I was plunged into darkness, heart racing, trapped. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The darkness wrapped around me like a suffocating shroud, the air heavy and cloying. I could feel my heartbeat pulsating in my ears, each thud a desperate reminder that I was alive, while the world around me felt more like a tomb than a house. Panic surged in my chest, a visceral response to being sealed away. I turned back to the door, pressing my palms against the cold wood, desperately pushing against it. It was as unyielding as the dread that consumed me. Hello? I croaked, my voice barely breaking through the thick silence. No answer. Just the low hum of something unspeakably sinister, breathing in the dark. In that suffocating blackness, I could feel the presence of the unseen figure lingering, its essence thickening the air. The weight of unseen eyes bore into my back, making every hair on my neck stand at attention. I could almost feel their breath on my skin, a cold, ghostly whisper that sent shivers racing down my spine. That I groped for my phone in my pocket, a small lifeline in the overwhelming darkness. The screen flickered to life, casting a weak glow that cut through the shadows. Just enough to show me the room wasn't barren. Aged furniture loomed around me, their forms grotesque and twisted, like mocking silhouettes of long-forgotten memories. Get it together, I muttered to myself, forcing my legs to move, to venture deeper into this suffocating space. With the dim light illuminating the dust motes swirling lazily in the air, I saw the room was filled with remnants of a life frozen in time. Pictures adorned the walls, their frames cracked and peeling, the faces faded like whispers of forgotten souls. As I moved closer to one of the portraits, I stilled, my breath hitching once more. The woman in the painting bore an uncanny resemblance to the missing wife, her eyes staring back at me, filled with a haunting sadness that twisted my stomach. But it wasn't just the likeness that unnerved me. A chill swept over me, and I felt as if she was pleading for something, an unspoken message trapped within the canvas that I tore my gaze away, swallowing back the fear that clamped tightly around my throat. Focus, I told myself. Find a way out. But as I did, I noticed a strange shift in the shadows, a darker presence creeping close, crawling along the edges of my vision. Before I could fully turn, I heard it, the softest of whispers, coiling around my mind like smoke. Help her. The voice was feminine, sweet yet distorted. It sent icy tendrils snaking down my spine. What do you want? I rasped, the tremor in my voice betraying my mounting terror. The whispers grew louder, echoing through the room as if 1,000 voices were converging in a frenzied chant, pressing against the walls. Help her. Help her. I stumbled backward, my body flooding with an instinctive dread. That's when I saw a shadowy figure flitting across the far wall, draped in tattered white, her features indistinct yet eerily familiar. My heart raced as I realized I wasn't imagining things. She was there. The wife. Please, you must help. The voice was clearer now, desperate and stricken, drawing me in. There was a magnetic pull to this entity, a haunting allure that rooted me to the floor as she pointed towards a door at the far end of the room. The whispers morphed into a chaotic crescendo, a storm of sound that threatened to engulf me entirely. With every inch closer to the door, the shadows writhed along the ground, pulsating like a living creature, eager to swallow me whole. Each heartbeat felt like a countdown, each breath a gamble. Reluctantly, I turned towards the doorway, my hand instinctively reaching towards the handle. Just as I was about to turn it, I froze when the air around me soured, almost rancid with an unseen malice. The figure began to fade, her anguished face twisting into a silent scream, leaving behind only the echoes of her voice. Do not. Before I could process, everything froze. The temperature plunged, an icy gust of wind sweeping through the room, extinguishing the soft light of my phone. Dark, smothering shadows Serato around me, curtains of night falling as I stood frozen in blind terror, and then, just as swiftly, something gripped my shoulder with a pressure that made the breath leave my lungs. I whipped around, my heart racing, and came face to face with the very essence of my fear, a gleaming pair of ghastly eyes glaring right back at me from the abyss. The room erupted. The walls trembled as a low, guttural sound rose around me. I couldn't scream, couldn't move. I was ensnared in a web of darkness, at the edge of a nightmare made real. Suddenly, as quickly as it began, the grip loosened. I gasped, falling back against the wall, but before I could scramble away, the shadows receded slightly, revealing the door I had been led to. But it was not empty, the handle was slowly turning. I was not alone. A menacing figure silhouetted against the dim light began to spill into the room, its smile alive with malice, revealing teeth that looked far too sharp. The air turned electric with terror. And with that, I realized I was not just an unwilling visitor, I was being summoned. The figure stepped closer, pulling itself from the darkness, its limbs bending at unnatural angles, skin stretched taut over jagged bones. A smile twisted wickedly across its lips, revealing rows of teeth resembling shards of broken glass. I pressed myself against the wall, the cold wood biting into my skin, my heart thundering in my ears. Help her, the entity whispered in a voice that was simultaneously sultry and chilling, resonating in my mind as though it were a rhythm I had forgotten but now desperately needed to remember. You want to help her, don't you? The words were laced with a hypnotic quality, wrapping around my thoughts like a serpent constricting its prey. I shook my head violently, trying to push away the insidious thoughts, but the shadow had a grip on my mind that felt inexorable. I staggered back as it advanced, my eyes searching the darkness for an escape. Let her go. I shouted, my voice trembling. But the figure only chuckled, a sound that echoed through the oppressive air, the bitterness of it scratching at my insides. Each laugh was punctuated by a soft rustle, like papers being shuffled, or maybe like dolls being played with. With every second, the shadows thickened, swirling in a dance that turned the room itself into a living being, breathing a rhythm of despair. The portraits on the walls seemed to pulse, their eyes following the figure as its grotesque face flickered in and out of clarity, an apparition caught between worlds. "Time runs thin," it said, its voice crackling with malice. "You can't fight her fate, she's a piece of me now," and you it leaned closer, breath sour as a grave, "you will join her if you dare to resist." The tingling fear crackled through my veins, electrifying every nerve. I turned my head to the door, the idea of escaping this nightmare igniting a desperate hope within me. But it was as if the very room conspired to keep me there, the walls shivering, shifting. "Come find me," the figure beckoned, its smile widening disturbingly. "There are secrets in this house you must uncover, revealed only to those who choose to stay. It's not just her you need to save." That I shook my head, eyes darting wildly. The whispers grew around me again, blending into a soft chant, a cacophony of lost souls drawing me towards the door yet pressing me against the wall. Help her, help her!" Suddenly, a shriek shattered the air. It tore through my reality with a force that felt like glass shattering inside my skull. Panic seized me, clawing at my throat. From the shadows, another form emerged, a girl, lost in despair, eyes wide with terror. She was too familiar, her features mirroring those of the haunting woman in the portrait who had beckoned to me. "Don't listen to it," she cried, her voice a desperate wail that echoed through the room, a sharp contrast to the figure's taunting laughter. "Run, before it takes you too." But the figure lunged forward, and chaos erupted. The room spun as I staggered away from both forms, colliding with the furniture that felt like it was alive, reaching out with jagged fingers. I turned just in time to see the girl's expression morph into anguish as the entity encroached upon her. "You always run," it hissed, and in that moment, I felt the very air thicken with suffocating wrath. The girl screamed, the sound chilling my very soul, as she was enveloped in darkness, swallowed whole. In an instant, her presence flickered and died, leaving behind the bitter taste of despair that hung thickly in the air. I was alone now, a solitary witness to horror, my heart pumping wild and frantic. The laughter echoed through the room, a mocking tribute to the girl's vanishing, and vaporous tendrils of fear coiled around me. The figure turned its gaze upon me, eyes blazing with a hunger that seemed insatiable. "Now it's your turn," it growled, the walls vibrating with its malicious mirth, the shadows swirling in anticipation, fighting against the weight of dread that threatened to consume me. I stumbled backward, reaching desperately for the door that felt as though it might close at any moment on my final escape. But the grip on my sanity was too strong, the whispers of the past wrapping tighter around me. Two choices loomed stark in my mind: confront the darkness and uncover its secrets, or flee into the unknown, knowing well that whatever I ran from might chase me forever. As my hand grasped the doorknob, the figure's laughter swelled again, reverberating through my bones, each peal urging me to relinquish my grip. With a surge of desperation, I twisted the knob, praying for a way out, but just as the door creaked open, the faintest glimmer of light spilled into the room, revealing a mirror that reflected not my desperate escape but a tangible nightmare, the specters of lost souls reaching out, their faces twisted in eternal anguish. And there, amidst their shadows, stood the wife, eyes filled with a sorrowful resolve. "They were waiting for me. Help us," she whispered, her voice mingling with the cacophony as the reality around me tilted in an unbearable crescendo. Before I could leap back, the figure surged forward, the door creaked wide, and the shadows erupted into a swirling vortex that pulled me toward it. I opened my mouth to scream, but the darkness surged, swallowing every breath, every hope, as I vanished into the depths of despair without a trace. My senses dulled as I was drawn into the darkness, consciousness slipping like sand between fingers. The sensation of falling was both vertiginous and surreal, accompanied by chilling whispers that gnawed at my mind. Around me, the air hummed with a cacophony of forgotten voices, tales of torment that resounded like a haunting melody. I hit the ground with a jarring thud, the impact sending a tremor through my body. I blinked, struggling to adjust to the suffocating haze that surrounded me. Shadows danced at the edges of my vision, and as I turned, I found myself in a parallel real-man ethereal version of the room I had just fled. Everything felt distorted, twisted in a grotesque way that sent shivers racing down my spine. The mirror loomed before me, not just a reflection but a portal that united worlds. I approached cautiously, the surface rippling like disturbed water. The tortured expressions of the souls I had glimpsed before merged with my fleeting thoughts, pulling me deeper into their reality. "Help us," they chorused, their voices blending together into a haunting lament. "She won't let you go." I recoiled instinctively, the weight of their despair pressing upon me, but a sinister force compelled me onward. An overwhelming regret washed over me as I searched their void-like eyes for a sliver of hope. Instead, I found only torment stretching into infinity. Then, beyond the mirror, I noticed movement, a flicker of light far away. Shadows billowed like smoke as the ghastly whispers sharpened into a single, clear voice rising above the rest. "Find the heart of this house. It is the key. Break the curse." With a gasp, I felt a tether snap within me. The awareness of my own vulnerability rushed in, filling me with terror. I was no longer simply a passive spectator. What was this house? Was it a prison, or something much worse? A shriek echoed again, louder and more frantic than before. I swallowed hard and turned back to the mirror, pressing my hands against the cold surface, which felt alive beneath my touch. For a fleeting moment, the room behind me flickered into view and I caught a glimpse of the figure, its razor-sharp smile now mirrored in every ghastly reflection. "Join us," it beckoned, extending a spindly hand toward me. "Help her, and you shall be free." I cried, retreating instinctively. My heart raced, each beat resonating with a primal yearning to escape this nightmare. Yet, instinct tugged at me, reminding me of the girl who had begged me to run, of the wife lost amidst shadows. They weren't mere ghosts, they were innocent souls trapped by a malevolent entity, and my actions whether to flee or fight would seal their fates. "Find the heart," the voices pleaded once more, intensifying, drowning me in the depth of their sorrow. My pulse quickened as remnants of memories began to surface, dim, flickering images of the house, of its secrets whispered through the wind. But just as I conjured an image of a grand staircase, a flash of light erupted around me, pulling me from the mirror's grasp. I was hurled back into the original room, breathless and dizzy, the air thick with anticipation. The figure loomed close, its breath hot against my skin. "Why hesitate?" it hissed. "Time is running short. You know what must be done." With sickening clarity, I turned back toward the mirror, which had faded into an opaque black slab, suffocating the light. Desperate, I felt an urgency from deep within, a primal instinct urging me to discover what lay at the heart of this forsaken place. But as I stepped forward, ready to confront the darkness, a guttural scream erupted from behind, the sound of something grotesque breaking through the barriers of fabric and time. I felt the air tremble, the room pulsating with an ominous beat as the floor beneath me shattered and opened into an abyss. "My heart. You have to find it," cried a voice, a familiar echo that sent chills racing through my bones. It was the girl. No. I shouted, as the floor beneath me cracked open wider, the shadows reaching out like clawed hands desperately grasping for me. Somehow, I understood if I didn't act quickly, I would be swallowed by the void, joining the suffocating mass of lost souls. With one last glance at the darkness unfurling toward me and the figure's impossibly wide grin, I hurled myself toward a faint glow in the distance, plunging headfirst into a nightmare from which I might never awaken. "Help us!" they cried, their voices melding into a sinister chorus. My heart hammered in my chest as the last vestiges of light flickered, and I was left teetering on the brink of a shattering truth. There, beneath the blackened surface, I felt something pulse, a beat that thrummed with darkness and desperation, echoing the whispered words of the lost souls. I was close. But in that instant, dread coiled around me tighter, and I heard a low rumble spilling from the depths as something ancient stirred, awakening to our intrusion. And then everything went black. When light re-emerged, it filtered through a murky haze, morphing the environment around me into an echo of something vaguely familiar yet utterly wrong. The walls were now slick with an iridescent sheen, pulsating like the rhythm of a dying heart. Shivers raced through my spine as glimpses of the past and present twisted behind my eyes, a distortion of fragmented memories and fleeting visions that I found myself on what seemed to be the remnants of an ancient wooden floor, rotting and splintering beneath my feet. The air hung heavy, thick with an unnatural chill that made my skin crawl. Shadows writhed and snapped in the corners of the vast, decaying hall, twisting into grotesque forms that beckoned me to come closer, to lose myself in their embrace. Stealing my resolve, I peered over a railing that spiraled downward into an infinite void. The soft murmurs of tortured whispers enveloped me again, their sorrow palpable, tugging at the corners of my conscience. "It's down there, the heart, you can feel it." Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, a whisper brushed past my ear, a chilling message, so close I could feel the breath of death upon my neck: "Beware of what lies below." My pulse quickened as the shadows coalesced into sharper shapes, flickering like candlelight on the verge of extinction. I turned to inspect the walls, desperate for clarity and guidance. Images began to materialize within the wavering surfaces, unsettling scenes of the house's previous inhabitants, laughter, sorrow, and a cruelty that transcended the mundane. It was then I recognized the face of the wife, forever frozen in a moment of either joy or despair, her eyes wide with an unspoken plea that ignited a fire within me. "Help me." "That is not your only connection," the voice echoed again, a malignant whisper curling around the syllables. "You must atone." Atone? What could that possibly mean? Hadn't I stumbled into this nightmare by mere accident? Anguish bubbled beneath my skin, my heart raced. There was significance to my presence here, a tether binding me tighter to the fate of this house and its lost souls. As I wavered on the threshold of consciousness and the abyss, the glow from beneath called to me, its warmth seeping into my bones and anchoring the dread. The void where the heart should lie seethed with an energy that resonated, beckoning me to uncover its truth. But as I focused on the glow, the shadows grew agitated, whispering warnings drenched in bitterness: "Leave. It's a trap." Yet, the whispers transformed into a cacophony, a desperate serenade of agony that amplified the sense of urgency, pushing me toward that ominous glow. The shadows receded momentarily, and I darted down the twisted stairs, each creak and groan of the wood beneath me echoing like tortured souls trapped within the very structure of the house. Then, I stepped into a dimly lit chamber, a sanctuary of obsidian stone, slick with moisture and despair. Before me lay a pedestal, upon which surged the glowing heart, a pulsating, luminescent orb that throbbed with an internal light, casting eerie shadows across the chamber. It breathed, as if alive, the energy palpable and intoxicating, yet laden with a malevolence that threatened to envelop me whole. As I reached out, drawn in by a force I could not resist, a rush of images consumed me: the wife trapped between worlds, her visage twisted by wrath, fleeting moments of laughter splintering into screams. The voices crescendoed into a horrifying symphony, pleading, begging for release, hope blending with despair. Suddenly, a bone-chilling howl echoed off the chamber walls, the sound rippling with an otherworldly wail. The air crackled, electric with a malevolent force, as the shadows coalesced around me, morphing into a treacherous figure. It glared at me from the fringes, eyes flickering with a demonic hunger. I stumbled back, my hand retracting from the glowing heart as the shadows lunged forward, each one longing to reclaim the light for themselves. Frantically, I turned to escape, my mind racing as the haunting whispers reached a fever pitch, but the path I had traversed felt different now. The walls shifted, closing in around me, and the exit vanished into a landscape that writhed with menace. Panic clawed at my throat as a low growl emanated from the darkness. "You're bound here now, just like her," it rasped, the taint of death evident in every syllable. In that moment, terror took root, a heavy weight pressing down upon my chest, and my feet froze to the ground. I could feel the presence of those lost souls swirling, their anguish vibrating through the air, imploring me to act but warning me to stay silent. Then the world imploded into pure darkness, and the last word escaping my lips became a scream, swallowed whole by the shadows. What I'd felt awaken was only the beginning, and the echo of that ancient entity was at my back, encroaching closer, its intentions clearer, as I realized with dawning horror the battle for my soul was about to begin. And then, something shattered. The ground beneath me tremored violently. I stumbled, and amidst the cacophony, a voice rang out, cutting through the chaos with devastating clarity: "You'll never leave." The shadows lunged forward, and everything shattered into a million pieces. I gasped, drawing in a breath laced with the iron tang of fear as the shadowed remnants of the chamber swirled around me. I felt them, those ancient entities, a thrumming presence that clawed at the edges of my sanity, suffocating me in their unholy embrace. As the echoes of my scream ricocheted within the void, I was consumed by a paralyzing dread, my senses unraveling like frayed thread. Every nerve in my body fired in protest against the icy touch of the shadows, their whispers morphing into shrieks that slashed through the silence. "You belong to us," they cried, rising and falling like a twisted symphony, growing louder, more fervent as if drawing strength from my fear. As the tremors beneath me intensified, the glowing heart, once an orb of tantalizing allure, pulsated with an ominous rhythm, its light now an unsettling beacon of doom. Suddenly, the floor convulsed a chilling reverberation that rattled the very foundations. The pedestal began to crumble, splinters flying through the air like daggers aimed at my heart. With a jolt, the chamber twisted, warping like a nightmare, peeling at the edges, morphing into a hall of suffering where the shadows writhed, no longer mere silhouettes but tortured figures, their identities shrouded in darkness. Mouths opened in silent screams, and I could feel their sorrow soaking into my skin, suffusing me with a dread so deep it felt primal. Turning desperately, I looked for an exit, my legs unwillingly barricaded by the fetid energy that churned around me. It pressed against my skin, dragging memories to the surface, snippets of laughter and love now tinged with betrayal and grief as the image of the wife flickered in my mind. What had she seen? What had happened to her? A jumble of thoughts hit me like shards of glass, each cutting deeper into my resolve. "Help me!" her voice echoed, pulling me back to the heart of my purpose. "Release me," it croaked from the shadows, a gnarled figure stepping forth, its face obscured by a veil of darkness except for two blazing eyes that held the weight of eternity. The entity spoke not in words but through the fabric of my mind, its essence intertwining with my consciousness. "Would you trade your soul for another's freedom?" The depth of that question haunted me, resonating in the hollow beats of my heart. A vision smacked into my psyche, the wife's spectral form gliding through the caustic shadows, reaching for me. Her eyes, once vibrant, were now hollow, and still, they burned with a desperate longing. A gasp tore itself from my throat. I could feel the gravity of her despair, the chasm between us forged by sorrow and betrayal. "Find me," she urged, the shadows around her twisting and snapping like ravenous fangs. "Break the curse before it breaks you." As her voice echoed, the tangible darkness roared, pushing against me with all its might. The room quaked with all the intensity of a likely cataclysm, walls stretching and groaning with unseen forces, ready to swallow me whole. Somber whispers darkened my thoughts, reverberating through my bones. "She is trapped, and you are the key." The growl curled back around my senses like a serpent, whispering malevolence into my ear. "She cannot be saved, but you can still serve another purpose." Dread thickened the air, and in that moment, I knew I had unwittingly become a pawn in this relentless game of darkness. Help her. The shadows hissed, or join her in eternal despair. In an instant, the room morphed, reshaping around me with a vicious ferocity. Doors materialized and melted away, the illusion weaving a tapestry of horror that ensnared me deeper into its web. I was trapped in a nightmare with no clear path of escape, lost in an unfathomable labyrinth of pain. Seeing no choice, I whipped around, preparing to plunge deeper into the abyss where the heart lay calling. I had to confront the malevolence that sought to claim my soul, to unearth the secrets of this twisted home where every floorboard bore witness to despair and heartache. As I fought against the oppressive dark, I rushed toward the fading glow that pulsed in the chamber's center, but the shadows thickened around me, clawing at my flesh, dragging me back. Just as I reached the threshold of light, a figure emerged from the depths, a ghastly woman framed within the haze. Her features bared both recognition and terror, with the wife's eyes set upon me in a mixture of wrath and betrayal. "Why did you come?" she shrieked, her voice cracking like shattered glass. The shadows writhed and pulled around her, forming a vortex that sucked the light from the room, plunging me into a void where screams echoed endlessly in my ears. "Make your choice," she wailed, her face contorting as the darkness surged dangerously close. It felt as though the weight of eternity hung in the air, trapping me between hope and despair. Just when I thought I could break free, a snarl echoed around me, drowning out the pleading wails of the lost souls. Suddenly, the walls collapsed inward, and the last thing I saw were those eyes, not filled with the longing for rescue, but with a terrifying clarity, it's too late for Methan. The shadows lunged, their fabric swallowing both her cry and my last shred of hope, and everything went black. I awoke, gasping for air, a jarring shock vibrating through my system as I found myself sprawled on a cold floor. The stench of damp earth and decay stung my nostrils while the world around me flickered like a faulty light bulb, indistinct shapes swirling like mirages in an oppressive fog. My heart raced, a thunderous drum in the desolate silence, drowning out the remnants of the wife's anguished cries that still echoed in my mind. Pushing myself up, the disarray of the room spun into focus. Jagged stones formed an uneven floor, crumbling walls were coated with grime that seemed to pulsate, breathing in sync with my unease. Shadows darted just out of sight, teasingly retreating whenever I turned to confront them, like spirits playing their cruel games, waiting for me to yield to fear. That I stumbled forward, the oppressive darkness around me suffocating, as if the air itself was thickening into a heavy fog that had a malevolence all its own. My fingers brushed against the damp walls, slick with something I dreaded to consider. Each step resonated in the silence, magnifying the dread in my chest. Where am I? I muttered, the question hanging unanswered in the air like a death knell. Ahead, a faint glimmer flickered, a spark of illumination that beckoned with a siren's call. Hesitating, I felt the shadows coiling around my legs, anchoring me in place, whispering in a language devoid of words. The weight of their scrutiny bore down on me, as though they were cataloguing my fears, savoring my despair. Ignoring the ominous tug of the shadows, I pressed on, arriving at an archway that led into a larger chamber. My heart sank, the fetid smell intensified inside this new space, mingled with something reminiscent of burnt offerings. Torches flared to life along the stone walls, casting long, flickering shadows that danced like tortured souls yearning for release. In that flickering light, I saw a grotesque altar at the chamber's heart, wrought from ancient stone, slick with moisture and dark stains I hoped were only the remnants of long-forgotten rituals. Atop the altar lay a twisted effigy of a man whose face was half hidden beneath a shroud of shadow, one hand outstretched toward the liquid blackness swirling below the altar, as if pleading for freedom from whatever entity imprisoned him. Suddenly, a mournful wail erupted from the altar's depths, cutting through the tension and clawing at my chest. I inched closer, compelled against my better judgment. The sound grew in both volume and clarity, and as if the shadows were pulling a curtain aside, a vision erupted before my eyes. A woman, ethereal yet wretched, frantically reaching toward me through a veil of darkness, the echoes of her despair intertwining with the very air around me. "Help me!" she cried, her voice shrill and desperate, resonating within my mind with the intensity of pain. It was her, the wife. The disarray of shadows receded slightly, and even in the darkness, I could see her distress. "It's a trap." "You must." With a sudden jerk, shadows leaped from the edges of the chamber and beset her, drawing her back into an abyss that pulsated with sinister glee. I could barely decipher her words, but the urgency was palpable as she was swallowed into that yawning abyss, her face contorted in an expression of terror that was etched into my memory. I staggered back, the remnants of her plea lingering like a bitter aftertaste in my mouth as the echoes subsided. Everything around me began to shift, walls contorting and wrinkles of reality folding upon each other like a collapsing star. The altar trembled violently, and shadows erupted from all corners, spiraling outward like tendrils of a monstrous beast stirring from a long slumber. "Join her." A voice bellowed, a cacophony intertwining with the shadow's shrieks, each plea disguising a menace that coiled like a serpent around my heart. "You will be freed at a price." Before I could comprehend, the room erupted in chaos. Cold, clammy hands reached out from the walls, snatching at my clothes and skin. I fought back, desperation fueling my every movement. As I propelled myself toward the altar, feeling the insistent pull of the darkness intensifying with every step. As my hand grazed the surface of the cold stone, the entire chamber shuddered violently, walls vibrating with a deep, anguished moan, shaking off the dust and debris that had long settled. From the stone, something began to pulse, a rhythm that matched my frantic heartbeat. I stared at the strange symbol carved into the stone, realizing it mirrored the marks I had seen on the altar. A central figure, surrounded by a circle of runes, each one radiating with a familiar power that surged deep within me. The realization hit like ice in my veins. I was not merely a spectator. I was part of this macabre tapestry, woven with threads of suffering, and the burden of choices lay heavy upon me. Suddenly, everything stopped. A deafening silence blanketed the room. No shadows, no wails, merely the ghost of the wife's final cries echoing in the void. As I closed my eyes in despair, a burst of blinding light enveloped me. When I opened them once more, I was no longer alone. A figure emerged from the shadows, another, but different, with eyes devoid of warmth. A twisted smile crept across its face, stretched and unnatural, as it stepped forward, revealing a form that bore an eerie resemblance to my own. "Welcome back," it hissed, its lips curling in delight as the darkness fell away, leaving us suspended in a space not bound by time. And then, in that haunting mirror, I saw the truth, the reflection of my life, of every decision made. That unyielding dread rushed over me. "What am I?" I stammered, the realization crashing to the surface, and just as I grasped the weight of the horror, it spoke again, words dripping with malevolence. "Your fate has just begun." The shadows slipped back, distorting the edges of my vision and warping the world around me. I found myself standing face to face with my darker twine, a twisted, incomprehensible version of myself that felt so alien yet achingly familiar. The twisted smile on its face seemed to pull at the corners of my own lips, a haunting mimicry that sent shivers cascading down my spine. "Your fate has just begun," it repeated, the voice slicing through the oppressive air like a dagger through flesh. Panic surged within me, and I stepped back, gaze darting across the chamber, seeking an escape from the prison that closed in tighter with each breath. "What do you mean?" I gasped, mind racing, trying to wrap my thoughts around this grotesque mockery of my being. As I inched further away, the altar shifted. A pulse coursed through its ancient stone, sending shockwaves that vibrated through my very bones. "The wife, she is part of this. Just as you are. This place feeds on souls, on despair," it said, its voice a low hiss, an invitation cloaked in dread. "Yours and hers intertwined, forever bound in this cycle of torment." No, I choked out, shaking my head violently, fingers trembling as I turned my attention back to the altar. Memories flashed her haunting eyes, the chilling pleas of despair. The air thickened, oppressive and chaotic, the atmosphere swirling into a cyclone of despair. "Ah, the past holds such power," my reflection murmured, gliding closer, the malicious glee evident in its eyes. "You can choose to embrace it or deny it, but it doesn't change the truth. The shadows will always return for what is theirs." Then, its hand shot forth, an elongated finger pointed at the altar as a tremor cascaded down the walls like a warning. "There lies your choice: sacrifice to save her, or fade into darkness." Just another whisper in this cursed place. My heart hammered in my chest as I turned back to the altar, the grotesque effigy now writhing with life, pulse throbbing and awaiting acknowledgement. "What must I do?" I asked, voice barely a whisper, my fear melding with desperation. "Offer a truth," it intoned, eyes narrowing with anticipation. A cold dread wrapped around me, a vice tightening at my throat. "The truth of what you truly desire." For a breathless moment, I faltered, the weight of my own dark secrets flooding my mind. The failures, the betrayals, the moments when I had chosen myself over the people I loved. But amidst the chaos, the echoes of the wife's cries pulled me back from the abyss. Her pain was my pain, the vibrant life stolen from her had now coalesced with my own. As I glanced back up at my reflection, I could see it savoring my hesitation as a predator watches its prey. "Do you not want her? Wouldn't it be easier to forget?" "No," I shouted defiantly, finding my voice amid fear. "I want to save her. I will do whatever it takes." The chamber shuddered as I threw my hands out toward the effigy. Fingers brushed against the cold stone, and in that instant, a blinding light enveloped me, igniting my veins with scorching fire. I was consumed by visions, images of my wife's laughter, her warmth, the life we had shared. And buried within those memories was a figure cloaked in shadow, an entity that had lured me into this hellscape, its fingers weaving through my past like threads in a tapestry. Yes. My darker self hissed, the glee palpable in its voice now transformed into a cacophony of laughter that echoed in the chamber, feeding off my resolve. Embrace the truth, but I was not alone anymore. The shadows stirred, swirling together, forming a swirling vortex that sank deeper into the very fabric of the room, their whispers rising into a deafening crescendo. Beyond, the cries of the wife reached a fever pitch, agony melding with the laughter of my reflection, a chaotic symphony that threatened to shatter my will. As the shadows thrummed with energy, I realized my true the pact forged across the boundaries of despair. I was willing to sacrifice the darkness within me if it could set her free. With a primal scream, I plunged my hands deeper into the effigy carved from stone. Heart racing as I offered my darkest truths, shattering the foundation of my very being. An arcane energy roared to life, vibrant and blinding, forcing me to embrace every shameful piece of myself, the darkness I had kept shackled. And then, sweet silence fell over the room, and I could see her again, the wife's face lighting up the chamber, radiant amid the creeping shadows. But just as I allowed a breath of hope to seep into my being, the laughter twisted into a terrifying roar, the shadows coalescing into an indistinguishable form. You think you understand the price? My reflection screeched, its form shifting and contorting, tearing at the fabric of reality. You will never escape. I felt a violent tug as if the room began to collapse, the effigy disintegrating beneath my fingers. I searched for the wife, desperately reaching out for her, my heart clawing within my chest, but then a clawed hand shot from the depths of the altar's shadow, wrapping around my wrist, the breath stolen from my lungs as I was yanked forward. I will not let you go. Echoed a voice, sinister and twisted, reverberating through the shadows as the world around me imploded. And in that breathless moment before the darkness fully swallowed me, I saw her, the wife's face, twisting in cruel uncertainty, caught between two worlds, her pleading gaze locking with mine as I was torn apart by the shadows, realization chilling my spine. Had I sacrificed everything just to lose her once more? I stumbled through a kaleidoscope of darkness, the weight of despair pressing relentlessly against my chest. The roar of shadows swirled around me, shrieking in a cacophony that drowned out my thoughts, leaving only fragments of memory and loss. It felt as though I were spiraling into an abyss where time ceased to exist and despair was a tangible entity gnawing at my very existence. The shadows squeezed tighter around me, their clammy fingers leeching the warmth from my skin. I gasped for breath, desperately clawing at thin air, searching for the warmth of my wife's hand. Please, I whimpered, panic swelling my heart, I need to find her. The shadows whispered in tongues I could not understand, yet their meanings wormed their way into my mind, vile and taunting. You will never find her. She belongs to us now, they hissed, the voices entwined with 1,000 others, lost souls who had been devoured by the darkness long before me. The weight of their sorrow enveloped me, threatening to crush the last remnants of hope that flickered within my chest. With each agonizing pulse of the shadows, I felt my essence fraying. I tried to scream, to defy this dark grip, but all that escaped my lips was a strangled sob. Suddenly, a blinding light flickered through the abyss, a stark contrast to the consuming darkness, its brilliance illuminating ghostly figures dancing at the edge of my vision. Each visage bore anguish, their eyes hollow, reflecting a truth I was yet to grasp. And then I heard her voice, a melodious whisper cutting through the chaos. Help me, please. It was a call drenched in desperation, echoing through the corridors of the damned. My heart lurched. I'm here. I'm coming, love. I shouted into the suffocating darkness, my voice barely carrying above the howling winds of despair. Just as I cobbled together a fragment of courage, the swirling shadows surged toward me, billowing like a monstrous wave. They pressed against the ethereal light, quaking with fury, and I felt the tugging pull of their anger, their intent to drag me back into the depths. Fool! A voice roared from the tempest. You do not belong in the light. You are one of us now. In that moment of sheer terror, I was torn from the reality I clung to, me world splintering into jagged shards of color. My heart sank as I realized I had been thrust into a realm of memories, a twisted reflection of the life we had shared, yet tinged with an otherworldly dread. Here, in this purgatory of recollections, I stumbled through the remnants of our life together, a laughter echoing hollowly, the lingering scent of her perfume mixing with the bitter taste of loss. I found myself standing in our old living room, one eerily familiar yet distorted, the walls creeping inward with a silent hunger. Framed photographs hung askew, their images warping, laughter congealing into cries for help. I reached for a picture, her radiant smile dulled, colors bleeding into grotesque tones of gray and black. This isn't real. This isn't her. I cried out, trembling hands curling into fists around the edges of the frame. But the shadows were relentless, licking at my toes with cold tendrils, pulling me closer to the heart of this haunting illusion. Do you not see? They whispered, their sinister tones wrapping around me like poison ivy. Your memories are merely shadows of what once existed. You belong here, with us. I tore my gaze from the photograph, heart racing as I felt the shadows shift once more, coiling around my legs, pulling me down into the depths. I closed my eyes against the pain, summoning every ounce of strength to break free. I won't let you take me. I will find her. Suddenly, a thought ignited in the darkness, a flicker of determination spurring me on. Focus on her, I urged myself. What did I need to remember? What would bring me closer to her true essence? Images flooded my mind, the day we first met, the warmth of her embrace, the nights we spent sharing dreams under the stars. And then, the moment, a fleeting instant where I had felt her presence slip away, the darkness creeping into our home like a thief. Stealing her from me. No. I screamed, and the air crackled as if my voice reverberated through the shadows recoiled, a treacherous hiss bubbling forth like boiling water. Resist all you want. She will never return. You are nothing without your darkness. And then I saw Ida form emerging from the veil of shadows, a figure cloaked in a robe that writhed and shimmered in an otherworldly light. I recognized its stance. It was an echo of my darker self, looming large, sinister in its intentions. Join me, and you will never lose her again, it offered, voice dripping with velvet temptation. The offer dangled before me like a ripe fruit, and I felt myself tempted. What beautiful lies could I weave if I surrendered? But then her voice pierced the void, echoing clearer than before. Don't. The shock of it sent tremors through me, grounding me against the torrent of darkness. I would not abandon her. I will not succumb to you. I shouted, summoning every ounce of my will, I will find a way. Just as I declared my resolve, the chamber trembled violently, shadows erupting into a chaos of light and sound, a furious whirlwind of torment. I could feel the walls of this realm fracturing, and the darkness screamed, a vortex opening beneath me, threatening to swallow me whole. The choice is yours, the figure taunted, its grin stretching wider. Will you deny the inevitable? And as the tumultuous force beneath me clawed for my essence, I caught one last glimpse of her face, the love reflected in her eyes morphing into agony. Choose. The void echoed, the world shattering around me, and in that moment, I felt the tenuous rope of hope slip through my fingers, and in the eye of that storm, just as I prepared to confront my fate, a shadow broke free, a figure stepping through the emerging rifts of light. It looked like her but twisted, distorted, a mirror image crafted from darkness, and it was looking right at me. Do you recognize me? It whispered, and the icy dread seeped back into my bones. Was this truly the end? Or had I unwittingly unleashed something even more horrifying? The chamber fell silent, holding its breath, as the figure smiled that horrid, familiar smile. It was Mimi, reflection twisted into something monstrous. My heart raced, a primal instinct urging me to flee, but where could I go? This place was designed to trap me, to keep me bound in an echoing loop of remorse. Do you see it now? The creature hissed, voice laced with mockery. You've already lost her. You always have. The shadow lunged forward, each movement a taunt, slicing through the air as it closed the distance between us. My breath caught in my throat, panic igniting my will to fight, to claw my way out of this nightmare, but I can save her. I gasped, desperation fueling my resolve. The shadows pulsed around us, thrumming like a heartbeat, as if they were laughing, cruel, echoing sound that rattled my bones and instilled dread deeper than I ever knew. You think you will save her? It circled me, its existence fusing light and dark into a grotesque tapestry of what I could have been. She will always be bound to you, just as I am. You are the anchor that ties her to this despair. The moment she beckoned you to help, her fate interwove with yours, bound in blood and darkness. The truth hit me like a hammer, shattering the remnants of hope that lingered. I staggered, words slipping from my tongue. No, I can't be the reason, are you not? The shadow interrupted, glee bubbling to the surface. Your very essence pulsates with darkness, feeding this place like a moth drawn to flame. You are one with us. One with her. The laughter echoed and swirled, overwhelming my senses, forcing me to grasp at the fraying threads of my sanity. In that moment of clarity, confronted with the twisted reflection of my own self-loathing, a new understanding emerged. If I was the chain binding the wife to this torment, then perhaps I could be the key to freeing her. But the cost? I shuddered at the thought my own soul laid bare against the abyss. No more, I whispered, voice trembling with resolve. I will not let you have her. I'll sever this bond. The shadows writhed, enraged by the insubordination, roaring back with a hunger that rumbled through the chamber. You cannot bear that which you cannot understand. The reflection screamed, raising its hands as shadows lashed out, coiling around me, squeezing the air from my lungs. Join me, let us rule this darkness together. The serpent-like tendrils constricted, yet the more they tightened, the clearer my thoughts became. I focused on the glowing heart, pulsing faintly in the altar's recesses, where I had felt her presence, her essence. Within me burned a flicker of light, a spark of love once more. I will release her even if it means sacrificing my own life, I cried, pushing against the suffocating embrace of the shadows. Whatever the cost, I'll confront this darkness. As I spoke those words, the shadows recoiled momentarily, sensing the truth reverberating within me, like the echo of a bell chiming in a deserted hall. I felt the raw, untamed energy of the heart surging, a lifeline tethering the two of us to the world. But the reflection retaliated, and the darkness surged forward, trying to swallow my resolve whole. Dare you? Dare you? The creature screamed, its voice shaking with rage, but I focused solely on the heart. The warmth cascading from it enveloped me, a torrent that filled my veins with purpose. I gripped the edges of the altar, knuckles white as I took a step towards my reflection, fueled by a burning determination. Let her go. I shouted, the words ringing through the chamber with an intensity that flared. It was a declaration, a challenge ignited by love and sacrifice intertwined. She doesn't belong to you anymore. In that instant, the shadows surrounding me twisted together, forming a monstrous visage, swirling with violent fury. You will regret this choice. You'll join her in suffering, just as I promised. But I was no longer afraid. The conflux of light and dark within me surged violently as if responding to my will. The heart pulsed stronger, and with a thrust of my will, I unleashed the ethereal energy, pouring every ounce of my truth into the altar. The air vibrated, shadows howling, and the chamber quaked as the reflection shattered like fragile glass. Light erupted, illuminating every corner of the chamber, and as it did, the whispers of 1,000 souls rang out, each one suffused with loss and longing. The room shook violently, and I threw my arms wide, inviting the surge, letting the energy envelop me completely. In that ephemeral moment, I felt her presence blend with mine, her spirit intertwining with my own, a beam of warm light seeping through the cracks of despair. Together. I gasped, and with the last breath of energy within me, I flung the tendrils of darkness away, unleashing the pulse of hope into the walls. With an earth-shattering roar, the darkness recoiled, the shadows dissipating into a whirlwind that sucked the sound of despair. But beyond the chaos, above the cacophony, her voice surged, a radiant whisper through the dark, breathless and resolute. You saved me. Shadows screamed one final threat before imploding, their cries vanishing into the ether, leaving nothing but an eerie silence in the aftermath. As the light brightened, I glimpsed her form coalescing before me, the wife manifesting from the remnants of darkness. Thank you, she breathed, and in that moment of luminous clarity, I understood the truth that lingered. The shadows were not just a prison, but a manifestation of our deepest fears and unacknowledged desires born from within me, transcending into reality. But as she reached for me, the ground trembled underneath once more, the lingering shadows seeking any remnants of despair. Though I had freed her, darkness thrummed ominously at its core, still yearning to reclaim its grip on our souls. Run! I shouted, already sprinting towards the exit that flickered into existencia, door bathed in the light of our combined essence. The shadows pursued, helpless against the love that had tethered us. We raced toward the opening, the dark tendrils clawing at our heels, desperate to drag us back into their void. But in that final moment, as we collided with the light, I felt a confirmation and understanding that the fight would never truly end. As the door slammed shut behind us, sealing away the remnants of the darkness, a chilling clarity washed over me. Evil doesn't just vanish, it lingers, ready to reawaken where hope falters, and as we stepped into the new light, hand in hand, the truth echoed in my mind: you may escape the shadows, but they will always be waiting in the corners of your soul.